You've put in the work, you've saved your money, and now you're ready to trade the 9 to 5 for morning coffee in Chiang Mai or sunset walks on the Portuguese coast. But here's the question nobody asks until it's too late. How do you actually keep the money flowing once you're there? It's the single biggest reason expats pack it up and move back home within 3 years. Not because they hated the country, not because they got scammed, but because the funding math broke. Their income strategy looked fine on a spreadsheet back in Des Moines. It couldn't handle the real-world stress of currency swings, visa surprises, and the slow creep of inflation eating a fixed number alive. So today we're ranking the 6 most common ways expats fund retirement abroad, from the ones that can survive anything to the ones that are basically a ticking clock. Let's get into it. Look, I get the romance. You sell everything, buy a one-way ticket, and trust that things will work out. Maybe you pick up some freelance work, maybe you teach English for a semester, maybe your savings stretch longer than you think. Here's the brutal truth. The figure-it-out crowd has the highest boomerang rate in the expat world, not because they're lazy, because they underestimated the friction. You can't legally earn income on most retirement visas. You can't open a local bank account without proof of funds. And when an unexpected medical bill hits, and it will, you're 3 wire transfers and a currency conversion away from solving it, all while your landlord wants rent in cash by Friday. This isn't a strategy, it's a gamble, and the house usually wins. On paper, this sounds smart. Semi-retired, teach a few English classes a week, earn enough in local currency to cover your living costs while your savings stay untouched back home. The problem, most countries don't want you working, full stop. Thailand's retirement visa explicitly prohibits employment. Vietnam has no retirement visa at all. You're on tourist e-visas where working is technically illegal. Even countries that allow it, like Portugal with its D7 visa, have tax implications that can eat your income alive. And here's the part nobody talks about. You're aging. That 20-hour teaching week that felt easy at 58 gets a lot harder at 68. This works as a bridge strategy for the first few years. As a long-term plan, it has an expiration date you can't see. This is the one you see all over YouTube, live like a king on $1,800 a month abroad. And the math does work on day one. The average social security check is around $1,900. In places like Colombia, Vietnam, or parts of Mexico, that covers rent, food, healthcare, and leaves room for travel. But you're building your entire retirement on a single fixed income stream in a foreign currency. Here's what breaks it. 1. Currency risk. The dollar is strong right now. If it weakens 20% against the local currency, which happens, your $1,900 suddenly buys $1,520 worth of life. That's not a small haircut. That's your rent and food budget collapsing simultaneously. 2. Social Security itself. The trust fund is projected to run short in the early 2030s. I'm not saying payments will stop, but if benefits get cut by 20-25%, which is the current projection, your Geo-Arbitrage math stops working overnight. 3. Healthcare. Medicare doesn't cover you abroad, so you're either buying local insurance, paying out of pocket, or flying home for treatment. One serious health event, a hip replacement, a cardiac issue, and your budget is blown for the year. This sounds like the dream. Buy a duplex in your 40s, pay it off by retirement, and let the tenants fund your life in Thailand. Passive income. No drawing down savings. What could go wrong? A lot, actually. A roof replacement back home costs the same whether you're in the house or 8,000 miles away, except now you're managing contractors across a 12-hour time difference. A bad tenant who stops paying rent can take months to evict, and those mortgage payments don't pause while you wait. Property taxes rise. Insurance gets more expensive. And then there's the concentration problem. If your retirement depends on 1 or 2 properties in one city in one country, you're not diversified, you're just a landlord with a longer commute. Rental income can be a great piece of the puzzle, but if it's your only piece, you're one bad tenant away from a cash crisis. If you've got a pension, a real one, from a government job or a union or a corporate plan that still honors them, you're in a better position than most. Combine that with Social Security and a disciplined drawdown from your 401k or IRA, and you've got a multi-layered income floor. The key here is the claiming order. The 401k, Social Security, or pension. Draw from the wrong account first and you trigger unnecessary taxes. Draw from the right one and you stretch your money years longer. For retiring abroad specifically, pensions have one massive advantage. They're not pegged to where you live. Your pension lands in your US bank account the same whether you're in Cleveland or Kuala Lumpur. Pair it with a conservative 3.54% withdrawal rate from your investments, and you've got a system that can handle currency swings and surprise expenses without breaking. The downside, most Americans don't have a pension anymore. If that's you, if your retirement is entirely self-funded through 401ks and IRAs, you're essentially in category number 1 territory, which brings us to this is the gold standard, a diversified income-producing portfolio, dividends, bond interest, REIT distributions that generates enough to cover your monthly nut without touching the principal. Layer in a 2-year cash buffer to ride out market downturns, and you've built a machine that funds your life abroad indefinitely. The expat who's cracked this code doesn't wake up worried about exchange rates. They don't care if Social Security gets cut. Their income isn't tied to one government's solvency or one tenant's reliability. The catch, and there's always a catch, is that this requires real capital. A portfolio yielding 4% needs to be around $500,000 to $600,000 to produce $2,000 a month. That's not rich, but it's not nothing. And you need the discipline to never touch the principal, which means having that cash buffer for emergencies. So which of these actually works? Here's the brutal truth. The expats who thrive long-term aren't using one of these strategies, they're stacking them. The winning formula I see again and again, Social Security as your base layer, not your whole budget, just your floor. A paid-off rental or two providing a second income stream. A dividend portfolio or structured drawdown for the rest. And a cash buffer of at least 12 to 18 months of expenses. That gives you 4 income legs. If one wobbles, currency dips, a tenant leaves, the market corrects, the other 3 hold you up. The expats who go home early, they bet everything on one leg, usually Social Security alone, sometimes just savings with no income plan at all. The math works on a sunny Tuesday in February. It doesn't survive a currency crisis, a health scare, and a rent hike hitting in the same year. If you're serious about this, if you're not just daydreaming on Zillow but actually planning, the move isn't to pick one funding method, it's to build at least 2 before you leave, and a 3rd within your first 2 years abroad. Here's my question for you. Which of these strategies are you actually using or planning to use? And if you're already abroad, what's your real monthly burn rate versus what you projected before you left? Drop it in the comments. I read all of them, and the gap between projected and actual spending is where the real story lives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next.